What an awesome intro. Thank you very much, Nick Antonetti, the magic man behind our warp drive there. Welcome back. This is episode 4 of Ramirez Unraveled. I have an incredibly special guest. Introduce yourself.
Hey, so I'm Kathryn, Andrea. I'm an actress. Sometimes I do screenplays. And I am very, very excited to talk about aliens and all of the fun stuff today.
We've picked out a few topics that we've set aside, and this is going to be a blast. I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to recognize a art event that's coming up in Frederick, Maryland. Nick, you want to go ahead and pull up the first image we've got queued, the flyer for our friends High Noon Kahuna. This shout out is going to go to Paul Kogel and Brian Michael Goad. I have known these guys since about 1989, 1990. I think High Noon Kahuna is one of the best local music acts out there right now. Nick and I have been fortunate to do one recording session with them and one show with them at Bad Habits. But Goad is just an amazing fucking drummer. So High Noon Kahuna will be playing after party for Frederick in the Streets on Saturday, September the 14th at 9:30 p.m. at Cafe Nola, which is located 4 East Patrick Street in downtown Frederick, Maryland. Show's only $5, and also there's a couple other bands on there. One of them is a band called Weed Coffin. I really like that name. But
Me too.
Yeah. But I haven't got to see them play, but I've heard they're great. But again, Paul Kogel, Brian Michael Goad of High Noon Kahuna, Frederick in the Streets next Saturday, September the 14th. All right, so now me and Miss Kathryn Andrea get to have a conversation. We met during the making of Zero, right? That was the first time that we've met.
Yeah.
I want to talk about your history as an actress, and let's start with, if people are interested in following you and knowing more about your career, what's the best way to follow you?
I would say either Facebook or Instagram currently. I've been thinking about making a website or, some of those things, but for now I'd say Instagram or Facebook, which, if someone wants to follow me on Instagram, it's Miss Kathryn Andrea. MISS Kathryn Andrea.
Nick, let's go ahead and cue up the divorce court clip that we have from when was this recorded?
It feels like it's actually been a while. It has actually been a while because they took a while to air this. So
now
last year?
Did you shoot last year? So that's not that long ago. Is this shot in DC? DC 25?
No, so a lot of these court shows.
DC 25 is Divorce Court 25th season. Mm-hmm. I'm a fucking idiot. I thought it was a DC station.
Oh yeah, because
I've never heard of DC 25. Anyway,
it's Atlanta is where this one is,
okay.
And these anyone who ends up going on one of these, they straight up fly you out. So they pay for your airfare, they lodge you, and it's 9 times out of 10 really nice. The other 1/10, moderate but still nice. Yeah. And they give you a driver, they give you per diem money, they give you your check after filming is done, and they have you back to your car within 24 hours. I was away from my car for 24 hours for this.
That's fantastic. Mm-hmm. Let's go ahead and play that, Nick.
Miss Murphy, why are there all these allegations of cheating?
That's the thing that I'm not quite sure of.
Bring the audio
because
up a little bit.
Because he's been accusing me of cheating on him.
There you go.
And it's been just accusations, just insecurities, just all these things going on. And I'm just feeling alone. But I've been lucky. I do have a witness here with me today Her name is Amanda. She is my friend. And she has stuck through me, through thick and through thin. And she is somebody who I trust.
Okay. Mr. Channel, why do you think Miss Murphy is cheating?
I have text messages between the two of them.
The two of them meaning the witness?
Yes. Yes, Your Honor.
Miss Murphy, is there anything you want to tell me before I bring out the witness?
I just said something to him, which he knows that I want to experiment and that I've been
You said you
vicarious.
guys came up with your
Because I
script
told
on
him
this.
at one point
How long
that
did you
I was
work on it?
interested in a threesome
Tell me
with
about
him.
the pitch.
And then he
a little
said,
bit about the pitch.
no,
so
he's monogamous. And I thought that
I
was
think we
weird
brainstormed.
because
I'm
what
trying to think
man
about how we came
wouldn't
up with
want a
it.
threesome with two women.
One who's in love with one.
But
And
yeah, like
You can go ahead. We'll go ahead and close that out. Anyone that wants to check out the whole thing, it's easily found on YouTube.
oh yeah, because it was golden and it was a whole lot of just brainstorming and I remember the whole cheating part, though originally I was supposed to be the plaintiff. Like we wrote it as a plaintiff, and when we get there they say, well, Isaac's gonna be the plaintiff, and we're like, okay.
Adapt and overcome.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the other stuff that I was looking at your resume, which is really impressive.
Thank you.
Let's talk about being on The Walking Dead. You know, we do this. We've had this zombie sign where Nick wants to replace it, but I thought the zombie thing is probably most appropriate for the conversation we'll have. So talk about being on The Walking Dead.
So The Walking Dead was a really, really fun one. I'm still surprised how I got on it. So me and my friend Mateo, shout out Mateo, I love you. So we were working at Markov's Haunted Forest over in Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're both scare actors. And he'd been saying something to me about I'm interested in trying to be on one of these shows and stuff. How do I go about this? And I'm like, well, telling him what to do, telling him the steps and the pages and stuff. But I went down to Atlanta for another project, which unfortunately I didn't get screen time on. But I don't really care because the experience was just absolutely golden. And it was called Shazam 2. And that was, it's what started the fire for me with acting. It was an absolutely magical set experience. It was great. I'm an actual Walking Dead fan. I love the show.
Oh, yeah, me too.
And,
me too.
Yeah, because like I went down an hour south of Atlanta. They have Sonoya, where they have the Alexandria safe zone. They have the area where the governor was and all of that. They have all of these things.
Woodbury, right? Governor ran Woodbury. I like the governor.
Yeah, because like I went down there and I'm not expecting anything. I'm just like, oh, okay, I guess I'll look around and see what I can find for, locations for this show. And there's a guy actually standing out there in zombie makeup, like full on body paint and everything. And I go to this guy and I have no idea what I'm doing yet with the industry. Like I just worked, effectively my first gig with Shazam 2. But I play a little bit. I act like I know what I'm talking about a little bit. And I'm like,
you're an
pushing
actress.
my hair back.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, hey, you work in the industry? I work in the industry too. I just worked a gig. Shazam 2. And I'm like, so, you work The Walking Dead? And he says, yeah, I worked a bunch of episodes. And I'm like, okay. How did you apply for that? And he tells me the page, and I find that out is they just don't say it's The Walking Dead on the casting calls. They actually had these little keywords that you had no idea unless you knew, and it basically filtered down the pool a little bit in advance. So my friend Mateo, so I've already got that information. So me and Mateo apply together. We both apply because they put out a call for the walkers and all of that. And we booked it. And we're staying there and we're just like, what? And it took us away from Halloween. So that's how Markov's lost 2 of its actors for Halloween. So sorry, Gumby. But it was a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, how talk about when you have to show up on set. You went through makeup, and let's talk about the whole shoot, how long you were there, and then we're going to get into our topics.
Okay, so when I was there, so they had a couple different eras to the Walking Dead set experience, and I know some people who have been there for a lot of it. I know a couple people who were there on different seasons, so their experiences were kind of different. For season 11, it was the COVID era.
Right.
And what they did was they paid a full day's wage for a COVID test. And they required 3 COVID tests before you stepped on set. And it had to have a day in between. Mm-hmm. So if you worked The Walking Dead, you had to basically be there a week in order to step foot onto set at all. So that's how I managed to spend a week in Atlanta twice. And I had just pick up gigs and stuff throughout that week, like other stuff. When we got to set, it was a 14-hour cap. It was a 14-hour cap. So they wouldn't shoot past 14 hours, but they would use all that time. They are very hardcore.
So you were there all day.
Yeah, and apparently before COVID, it was a longer cap. They'd go for like 16s and stuff. When I went back for the second time, because I also played a survivor, I got booked as a survivor later on. It started snowing during a summer scene, and that was season 11 episode. So I was a zombie in episode 17, episode 22. I'm next to Ezekiel and all that. It was supposed to be summer. It starts snowing, and we're just like, now what are we gonna do? Like, what are we gonna do? Yeah. And we're sitting there waiting for that kind of answer, and they actually had a PA come out with a torch and melt the snow off the set. And then we started rolling again, and I'm just like, that is how I intend to take on life's problems.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I saw that you posted you have an audition later today.
Oh, I got it done last night. Okay. So it's how my life works, is if I'm taking a day to prepare for a gig, so doing some more research, just coming in as ready as I am, even for this gig. Bam, my emails are going to hit. Audition. So I had 2 auditions, just bam. And they're just like, oh, by the way, it's due by midnight Sunday. And I'm not really sure exactly what that means. Does it mean like midnight as of like several hours ago, or midnight coming up?
Right.
But I prepared accordingly, like it was the earlier one. Right. So I knocked it out, and yeah.
That's awesome. All right, let's pull up. We have a second image, and I've made a tradition so far of trying to give the show like a literary dedication. I've done William Burroughs. I forget who we did last time, but this one I wanted to talk about Whitley Steber. I read a few of his books, and he was one of those horror writers when I was young that his books were frequently being turned into films. Have you ever seen the film The Hunger with David Bowie?
Ooh, I want to.
I really recommend that one. It's a brilliant film about vampires. That's a Whitley Steber story. And The Wolfen is another one of his that got turned into a film, not film. But in 1987, he publishes a book called Communion, where he talks about, being visited by extraterrestrials. He does an incredible book, Majestic, which is published in 1989, all about the Roswell incident. It's a fictionalized telling from someone similar to the guy we're going to talk about, Philip J. Corso. But it's a great book, so anyone that would like to get a literary bit and a little bit deeper knowledge of the whole Roswell story, I suggest Majestic by Whitley Steber from 1989. All right, Nick, let's go ahead and cue up that first video that we have. This is from Unsolved Mysteries. I believe this clip is from 1989. We're going to look at it from 9:27 to roughly 5 minutes in. And this is the real core of the whole Roswell. All right, that's from Unsolved Mysteries. So, I want to say a couple of things on Roswell because we have another clip, and then I'm going to hand to you. There are 2 crash sites involved with Roswell. There's the first one discovered by Matt Brazel, which they describe as a debris field. Mm-hmm. So it's like the ship must have hit this area, parts of it break off, but it's still able to maintain. And I think the second crash site is roughly like 30 miles away, where you pick up where the bodies have been come out of the body or have come out of the UFO. The fascinating thing for me, again, has been the consistency from all of the eyewitnesses, who are all of them are gone now, right?
Yeah.
But they maintain that same story. What's your take on Roswell?
So I was thinking it was insane. So one of the things that I was reading about is that a lot of these people at this military base that it was the same military base. I think it was Air Force, right? That they came up with the bombs that got dropped on Japan.
Right.
So these guys are genius. Like they're able,
the
like,
best of the best. They're elite. It's an elite unit.
Yeah. So these guys aren't just some random, kind of all out there or a little bit not knowing what they're talking about. These are the smartest guys, that like the smartest and most trusted guys in the military. And then they're just going to say, oh, well, they don't know the difference between a UFO and a weather balloon.
Right. Also, to the audience, to put in perspective, 1947, that's only 2 years after World War II, right? Mm-hmm. So you still have battle-hardened veterans in the service, right? This is only 2 years removed from the greatest conflict in human history at that point, right? So, yeah, to portray them as doofus and as not knowing the difference between a weather balloon and a spacecraft is it. But they're able to shut it down. That's the core. And I was watching a couple of videos getting ready for this, and I was fascinated that there's an incredible amount of documentation around the whole Roswell incident. There's a tremendous amount of activity, but there's 2 years of records from the Roswell base that are just gone. Just gone. Cover up. Gone.
Yeah.
Gone.
Because plus the initial report, that they were even touching on in that video, how, initially they straight up said we
got it.
Yeah, they straight up said it was a UFO and that it was taken in to, get looked at and everything. And then suddenly the very head guy of the Air Force comes in and says, oh, never mind, it was a weather balloon. And then, bam, they classify it as quickly as they can after that. It says a lot. And one of the things that I was wondering, one of my big questions when I was researching, all of this, is why would they be covering it up? That's the thing that didn't make sense. It felt very, very conspiracy, very...
Cue that Predator sound right now. There's the time for the Predator. Let's get the Predator going. There we go. We're going to get back to that theme. Nick, let's cue up the second video we have about Roswell. This is an interview with W. Glenn Dennis. I'm going to play this out, and then I'm going to talk for a little bit and talk a little bit more about Roswell. So let's play,
messed
Mr.
up and everything. That she said she hadn't slept all night, and she was, she didn't know what was going to happen. She said that in one crash bag there was 2 very mutilated small bodies, and she explained that they had the hands were severed on one. The doctor would take a long forceps and turn it over. They explained that there was 4 fingers, very fragile. They had little pads on each end of the 4 fingers. And the way the doctors described it, that it looked like there might be little minute suction cups in those pads. Then she explained to me that they had a very large head that were flexible like a newborn child. The eyes were very large. They did not have a bridge. The face was concave. They had 2 orifices. The mouth was only 1 inch. There was no teeth or tongue. They did not have the ears, as we know. They had 2 ear canals, a double ear canal, not just 1 ear canal. What she did, The night before, she drew me a small diagram on the back of a prescription pad that she always kept in her uniform there. And she did the best she could on the drawing of the head and the little arms and explaining to me what it was. She gave it to me and told me that she wanted me to have it, but that I would never reveal where I got it. I mean, that her name, she did not want to be involved anymore in this, and all. And I gave her a sacred oath that I would not reveal her name. And that was the last time I saw her. I called out the next day, and they said that she was transferred out that afternoon. They don't know where. About 6 weeks later, I get a letter from England. About 6 weeks later, my letter came back, and down on the corner it said return to center. Then it had in the red letters deceased, and it was sent back to me.
When Roswell, and I say this to my friends, okay, I feel as if I hold the equivalent of a PhD, if not 2 PhDs in this alien UFO thing. In 1995, I got to go to Roswell, traveled to Roswell. I met Mr. Glenn Dennis. I didn't realize who he was when I met him. He's the first director of what's called the International UFO Museum in Roswell. Mm-hmm. Still there, founded in 1991, still active. They do conferences there. It's become a real voice in the disclosure movement. But this dude basically took me on the fucking tour of the whole UFO museum, and it wasn't until after that I found out he was an eyewitness, that he had been on the base. It was really an incredible experience. But that was, Roswell has been a fascinating subject of my or topic of to me, since I was first introduced to it from the Unsolved Mysteries. X-Files used it a lot in the show. Now to share this one comical story with you about the trip to Roswell. I went cross country with an ex-girlfriend. We had been broken up at that point for a while, so I'm stuck in this fucking Geo Metro with So by the time we're in New Mexico, we're it's tense. But I was living in Baltimore at the time, and we're in Roswell, and I turned to her and I said, "Nature, did you notice there are a lot of people from India here?" And she looks at me and she goes, "You fucking idiot, they're American Indians, we're in the West." And I was like, oh, I understood the whole Christopher Columbus thing on a whole new level. But anyway, so what's your final takeaway from the Roswell incident? Please share.
So my final takeaway from all of the research and everything is, I would say I definitely believe all of the theories. I'm definitely going to say that I believe everyone that actually witnessed it and got their stories basically covered up. What was it that I was going to think, or that I was going to say, is I think the government was after the technology. And because there was something I read that made a whole lot of sense to me, because I was asking that question, is why would they cover it up?
Right.
And it was, about to be the Cold War. They're on the verge of that. So they're going to want any technological advantage. So when I read that, it made a lot of sense, especially with the research I found about the randomly ahead of their time advances that were made very, very soon after Roswell.
After Roswell. Nick, let's pick up our next topic, because this is you've made a perfect segue. Thank you. Because what does happen the day after Roswell, right? What happens after Roswell? So America and this elite group of our leadership all of a sudden have this alien thing thrown in their lap. How do we handle this? So let's cue up the MJ12, Majestic 12 documents video clip that we have. I think this is from Ancient Aliens.
Ancient astronaut theorist Giorgio Tsoukalos is at the home of Linda Moulton Howe. After examining all of the material related to the Majestic 12, she believes that the most compelling documents are those that surfaced in Maryland in 1994.
This, to me, this is the best document that's been leaked. It's called Restricted Psalm 101, Majestic 12 Group. And all of us, when we first saw that title, Extraterrestrial Entities in Technology, Recovery and Disposal, one of the first things that everybody wanted to do was find out, okay, did they use this stamp in 1954 from the War Office? Turns out that they did all the way up into the 60s. And one of the more important pieces, I think, is as you go through here, they found in a government printing office, take a look at this. This is from a blow-up where they were doing a test. And look at this unauthorized, and look at what happens to that Z. It raises slightly.
Right.
So Bob went to the government printing office and found a guy named McCarter who was printing in the GPO in Washington, D.C. in 1954. And he took one look at this text and he said, this was done on a monotype. I used it, and the Z would collect dust.
I think
and
that's good
why the Z's
right there.
would.
The MJ-12, the Majestic 12, is reported to be this, after the Roswell crash, they've got to figure out what the fuck are we going to do? Excuse my French. What are we going to do? What do we do here? So there's a group of 12, right, that are handpicked by the president to basically decide national policy from that point forward. I told Nick I was always fascinated, and when I was getting ready for this episode on this, I had forgotten some of the details with the MJ-12, but there is, I'm going to pull this up real quick. The one story always fascinated me from the early days, when the MJ-12 documents were first being broke. And the story begins sometime in the 80s when a photo canister is sent to a UFOologist, and on them are all these top secret, for your eyes only, Magic 12. But the very first United States Secretary of Defense, his name is James Forrestal. He's one of the 12 listed in those documents. So it's Vannevar Bush, right? President George Bush's father. George Bush, of course, ends up head of the CIA. Imagine that. But this Forrestal guy, the rumors inside of the UFO and conspiracy theory community has always been that he was murdered, right? 2 years after Roswell, they say he wanted disclosure. He wanted to go in a different direction, and it's ruled as suicide. And they claim he jumped out of the 16th story room window at a Bethesda Naval Hospital or something like that. But for a defense secretary to have a nervous breakdown, that just, I don't know, that just doesn't sound right to me.
Yeah, that seems sketchy to me.
So what did you learn on MJ-12 when you were getting ready for the episode?
My information on that is still a little bit more limited.
No.
But everything I found was very interesting, and it made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
So there were some things, because I was taking, bits and pieces, like there's things that make sense to me, and things where I'm just like, this seems a little bit baloney. Not Philip Corso. What's the other name on the list? It's
Bob Lazar.
Bob Lazar. That's it.
Lazar.
Bob Lazar, to me, I do not think is very credible at all.
Really?
Yeah.
We'll get into him. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Philip Corso video, since you mentioned his name. And this ties into the MJ-12 and what goes on with the technology afterwards. We'll take a look at Philip Corso, and then we're going to talk a little bit about his 1997 book, The Day After Roswell, and we're going to discuss the implications of what happened to that alien technology from the Roswell crash.
Yeah, because the MJ-12 part, it made a lot of sense, because they would have had people, especially with there was a part about 3 CIA agents that came in and
pause that just for a second, Nick. Go ahead.
There were 3 CIA agents that came in and told one of the top people with the military. They were just like, none of this happened.
Right. Yep.
And all of that, and it just adds up about that very, very special group of people who can know things.
And those who can't, right?
Exactly.
Right. The gatekeepers. The gatekeepers.
Yep.
The gatekeepers. Let's play this video and we'll pick this up.
Wreckage found in the desert outside this small town is believed by many to be a UFO.
The question is, are UFOs real? The answer is yes.
For years, controversy has grown about what really happened here that summer night. Now, a decorated ex-U.S. Army intelligence officer has made a remarkable claim. He says that not only are UFOs real, but that the U.S. military harvested advanced technology from them. He knows this, he says, because he held the technology in his hands and saw alien bodies from the Roswell crash.
The humanoid-type body came from the Roswell area where there was a crash in 1947.
Watch why Japanese people...
You can go ahead and end that right there. I think that's the core of what we need from Corso. His book is published in 1997, the day after Roswell, a year before he dies. And same with some of the other stuff that we've been talking about. A lot of these characters, they're like deathbed confessions, right? Like, what can the CIA do to me? What can the Men in Black do to me? Nothing. I'm dying, so I want you to know this is real. So what was your take on Corso?
I think he's brilliant.
Yeah.
I think he's very, very reputable. I picked up his book. I'm starting to get into that. He made a lot of really good points about the advances and stuff that got made after Roswell. Apparently, the material for bulletproof vests, fiber optics, all of that is based off of alien technology because they pulled it and they reverse engineered, the stuff that they found at Roswell. And one of the other things he said was cell phones. There was a guy I read about, John Lear. And it was either him or his father who owned Motorola at one point. And they came up with a phone that worked in space in like the 50s. But all of these innovations that got made in the 40s and 50s, and for most of that time, they didn't even have color TV. They didn't have wheels on luggage.
Right.
They thought cigarettes were good for you. I mean, people were not very smart. So how are they coming up with all of these things? How are they breaking the sound barrier then on their planes? And that was 3 months after Roswell. Is suddenly, bam, they're breaking the sound barrier for the first time, which no one thought was possible in planes. Yet you have all these other things. Everything Philip Corso says just makes a lot of sense to me. And it's been really interesting reading.
He's got a tremendous amount of credibility, unassuming, and as we were talking about earlier, one of the things, when I saw the UFO clip is probably from sometime in the 90s or something like that from History Channel, but the whole fiber optics things was brand new, and I'm old enough to remember when Al Gore claimed that he had invented the internet. He got a bunch of heat. But at the time, our government was funding the laying of huge amounts of fiber. I mean, basically laying the whole infrastructure that's the internet that we use today, right? And I remember thinking to myself, how do they even know that this stuff works? But they already had the plan. They had already So I definitely believe that the fiber optics and the internet, that kind of stuff is definitely alien technology that we're being used today. In the first episode, and anyone that knows me closely knows I'm obsessed with what we call geopolitics. I'm very concerned. I believe, we're on the cusp of World War III. We have NATO supplied and backed troops literally inside of Russia. We're funding this war with Ukraine and Russia. We're pushing China. Is the only reason that we're willing to do these kind of things because we believe that we have some kind of superior technology, right? But I don't believe that they don't have the same alien technology too. Either they've stolen it or stolen our secrets or whatever, or they have their own ETs, you know. So I don't know.
Yeah. I just think it's insane. Like all of the technology that they're probably even holding from us.
Right.
Because honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, if they're able to do some of the stuff that UFOs are even able to do, if they're, you know, if they have like aircraft and spacecraft that's able to do more than any of us even think it can do right now.
Some of the fascinating videos that are coming out now, like one of the videos that we used in our second episode, they call it the jellyfish, right? And it's filmed from this weapons platform and a military base in Iraq in 2017. I can't remember the exact. It's incredible footage. It's like nothing that we have, nothing like we have. But what these things do is they go under the water too, right? Like we have absolutely nothing that can go from the sky into the, you know, to be a jet and a submarine at the same time. We don't possess that kind of technology. I don't believe that the Russians do. I don't believe the Chinese do. But those are the videos that are being released by like the Navy pilots. The one they call the Tic Tac, it also submerges below water too.
That's actually pretty interesting because I'm thinking, and I feel like it could be done to be able to have you know, the same you know, craft work in both. That's interesting to me.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And you know that and when you listen to the Navy pilots, that's one of the things that really there's been like a couple of congressional hearings. We were trying to get a friend of ours named Steve Blickenstaff, an artist that we've worked with, plays in a couple of bands we love, Atomic Mosquitoes. He actually went to the last hearing. I think he said he got there something like 4:00 in the morning, stayed in line, and you know, to be able to listen to David Grush was there, and big and the Navy pilots that have come forward. But that's the one that I hear a lot of people talking about. Is I forget the name, trans, you know, for it to be able to go from air into to the water, because that's an amazing technology, you know.
This is actually making me very curious on something I'm going to look into later on about the difference between outer space and the deep sea.
Yeah. You mentioned Bob Lazar, so I'm going to be curious to hear your take on him. We're going to watch. I want everyone, like, if you're new to the alien disclosure movement, I encourage you to please start with Jeremy Corbell. Jeremy Corbell is you know, a fascinating filmmaker, media maker, but for whatever reason, he's become the leading voice in this disclosure. So let's take a look at his, I think this is from 2018, trailer for his documentary on Bob Lazar, and then we're going to pick this conversation up on Lazar.
This story is extraordinary, especially if it's true. And it all started in the desert, just north of Las Vegas.
A local scientist who's worked at Groom Lake
said to be where top-secret weapons systems have been tested over the years.
He has asked that his identity be shielded.
Exactly what's going on up there?
What's going on up there could be the most important event in history. Physical contact and proof from another system, another planet, another intelligence.
What would happen to you if the government learned that you were giving us this information?
He just wanted to stay alive. Maybe this has been kept from us for a good reason.
Sir, how do we know you are who you say you are?
My name's Bob Lazar. I'm known for working at a classified base and reverse engineered alien spacecraft.
It went all over the world. He put Area 51 on the map.
Can we ever be made whole if we're not believed?
We can't verify what was going on in his background.
I have no motivation to lie. The science and the technology can change us.
We've always looked to the skies for answers instead of looking into ourselves.
It's a top-notch film. If you haven't seen it, I really recommend it. And I'm a big Mickey Rourke fan, so that kind of helped sell it for me. I followed Mickey since he was young. Loved him in that Angel Heart. I thought he was, and when he was a young actor, he was a captive. I thought he was great in The Wrestler too.
Yeah.
And as I've said before on other episodes, I'm okay with my heroes being flawed. Like, he's a flawed man, but, I'm okay with that, He's a fascinating actor. The voice, I loved it as the narrator. But it's a top-notch documentary. It's good. So give us your take on Bob Lazar. What was your thoughts?
So, I feel like things get a little murky when it comes to Bob Lazar. So I was reading quite a lot into his background and everything as well. And it makes me distrustful of him. So, he'll say some stuff that's interesting, but I feel like I'd rather pull more information from a source that's got a little less of a sketchy background. So, they really try to go all in and discredit him, though, because
they from the moment. And for me, Lazar, and again, I mentioned Jeremy Corbell. He does a fantastic podcast with George Knapp, right? This reporter that's been on the UFO story since the 80s. He's the one that actually broke the Bob Lazar story in, I think it's 1989.
Yeah.
But they do an incredible podcast together called Weaponized, which again goes to the whole theme of this alien technology being weaponized. But there's a consistency in Lazar's story, but for me, the fascinating thing, when Lazar first, he talks, I think it's called Element 151.
Oh, yeah.
Which at the time was not, it wasn't even on the periodic tables. It had not been discovered. So it's something like 20 years later, I'm listening to the news and they start talking about Element 151 or whatever. And I'll go, what? Yeah. That's the fucking shit that Bob Lazar was talking about. But then it's a few more, it's probably not even until a decade after that, because 89, how long ago was that? That's 30-some years ago, right?
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, close to 30 years. Yeah, man, I'm old. But, yeah, so to see that he tells this story in 89, and then this documentary is 2018, his story never changes.
Yeah.
But here's the one thing that they put forward in the documentary that I thought was fascinating, is they allude to Lazar stole some of this Element 151 from wherever he was working. He was able to smuggle it out, and he's held that or some piece of alien technology as his ultimate blackmail thing. Like, if you continue, or if you seize me, or, and while they're making the documentary, he's got this small nuclear company. Everyone's got to make a living. He's a physicist. Yeah. So he does something, but it ends up getting raided by the FBI.
I was reading about that. See, here's the thing: is the Element 151. That seems pretty reputable. There's been some stuff where they'll try to kind of go against him and try to discredit him in ways that don't make sense to me. Like the prostitution.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I'm glad you brought that up. I was like, what?
It's like, how are you going to be like, this person is instantly not reputable because they solicited a hooker one day in their past? I mean, that's kind of...
Was that what it was? He solicited a hooker? I thought the accusations he actually was running some kind of sex trafficking.
Because...
And I was thinking, whenever they come at people with that sex trafficking or those kind of allegations, I've always believed them to be 9 times out of 10 bogus. That's what they used on Julian. What's his name? Julian Assange. The one. Yeah. He's supposed. They have to dig something back from like 10 years ago, but that's what they try to hurl at Assange. It's
Yeah.
what they tried to hurl at Russell Brand when they didn't like recently. So, yeah, I thought that one was odd and seemed very much out of character for him.
See, like, I'll even believe it. I'll like it's like what if
You're
he
in
did-
Vegas?
Yeah, it's like what if he did show up at a brothel and he, you know, wanted to see a prostitute? I mean, it still doesn't. It has nothing to do. It doesn't really make
It doesn't
a
mean
person
he didn't
bad.
see
It doesn't-
E.T.
Exactly. It says nothing, like, at all about his work, and that's the thing that says to me that they really don't like him.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was something I read about how they found his name. So you know, they straight up say he's just like this random guy, you know, who has no insider knowledge at all. Yet they literally found him on a list of employees,
Right.
and then they come back and they're
Right.
just like, oh well, he must have been the janitor.
And going back to the MJ-12 documents too, when they first came out, there's this incredible, you know, they're bogus, they're blah, 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 blah. But since then, you know, they found other references to MJ-12, Majestic 12. Like, it's clearly a real entity that exists to this very day. And let's talk about a couple other subjects related to this too. I had this conversation last night, right? With the presidents. I believe from the Roswell incident up to Nixon, that the presidents are part of it, that they're read in. But I do believe that there's a certain point where the presidents become read out. For whatever reason, political figures think it's in their best interest to not talk about UFOs. Because going back to Roswell, during the Clinton administration, Clinton, and I can't do a good Clinton impersonation, but he said, you know, people ask him, did aliens crash at Roswell? And he goes, I want to know too. And he does this, you know, and they put forth this new, you know, Roswell report. This, you know, that's supposed to be the truth this time, you know. And it's just another big lie. And it's still a weather balloon. It's called Mogul. No, it's Project Mogul, you know, and they have these stupid dummies. And so they say the dummies are supposed to be the alien bodies and all this. And I remember everyone in the UFO community just laughed at that when they put it out. It's like, this is no different than the original Jesse Marcel cover-up. You know, you're just saying it's a different balloon than the first weather balloon.
Yeah.
And they come up with some crazy, it's these dummies that they thought that again, these elite airmen thought were, you know, aliens. So again, ridiculous.
And it's insane how they just keep denying, because I was reading about a couple really high profile people who have straight up come out and said they've seen UFOs, they've seen aliens. Reagan came out saying he's seen them.
There's the famous, he addresses, if I'm not mistaken, like the United Nations. And he says, you know, wouldn't we all come together if there was an alien threat? And he says, essentially there is. Like, I mean, he plays it off as some kind of like joke or whatever, but it's one thing inside of the UFO community that's always this Reagan quote. But one of the reasons I believe that the presidents got read out, where they decided, okay, we can't have these idiots involved in any kind of decisions that truly affect our nation, right? I mean, our presidents are impotent puppets, but anyway, that's a whole other show. There's the comedian that played Jackie Gleason. I know Jackie Gleason from the Smokey and the Bandit movies from when I was young. But there's this famous story that Nixon had Jackie Gleason to the White House. They get drunk together. You know, he was a horrible alcoholic. So Nixon and him get drunk. And Nixon breaks out this 16 millimeter projector and shows him this footage of aliens landing at this Air Force base. And he wants to release it. Nixon wants disclosure.
Yeah.
And he gets shut down. There's no, again, because of national security. It's always supposedly national security. But the story is that's what becomes Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the move to Steven Spielberg. That Jackie Gleason story, you know, is what becomes Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
They were talking about some interesting stuff. Actually, it's in my book about close encounters and, you know, the
show your
definitions.
book to the audience. Let's just show and tell everyone where you got the book. That's awesome.
So I was at the Brambleton Library, and apparently there's some other libraries in the same network that also have this book, but it's called History Decoded: The 10 Greatest Conspiracies of All Time, and it is for
Roswell
adults.
made it in.
Yeah, because it's for adults. Because at first I sort of had questions because you have these little folders that have papers in them and stuff, but it's evidence. They have the original report of Roswell that's in here. They have the Project Blue Book questionnaire is right here as well. They straight up pulled this stuff just to refer to, which I thought was really cool. Yeah. And it's just been really good, and it's a very, very, very good like primer is what I was thinking, but it also gives a lot of really good leads about different topics with Roswell and stuff. Right. So if you don't know a whole lot about it and you want to know quite a bit, then this is a good like ABCs of the Roswell incident. I would recommend it.
Yeah, I think it's in and everyone, I mean, anyone that's following me or knows me thinks I'm crazy with the alien thing because of the obsession. I believe it's in 2021 when Trump makes an executive order. They're supposed to cough up what they know about the aliens, and it's all bullshit. I mean, every time the president says you got to cough it up, they don't give anything. But the most significant thing that happens in 2021, which is a monumental shift from Roswell to 2021, is you have the Pentagon going, could be, you know. They issue a statement, and talking specifically about the videos we've been talking about, the pilot videos, they say it could be extraterrestrial. And that, for me, is it's just a monumental shift from being told you're crazy, you're a conspiracy theory. Never. Always the Pentagon has made no. There's no aliens. There's no UFOs. There's none of this. It's all a figment of America's imagination that goes back, I mean, how long ago was 47? What is that? Close to 100 years ago, 75 years ago.
Who?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So let's cue up the X-Files, and I thought for fun we're gonna close with our own personal UFO stories.
Okay.
And you're gonna go first.
Okay.
You a fan of the X-Files?
I sadly am very uncultured and have never seen it.
You would love it.
I'll give it a watch when I get home.
Yeah. It's a fantastic show.
Yeah.
All right. So please, Kathryn, share with us whatever you want on what you've seen, your personal experiences with this phenomena.
So I have had 2 UFO sightings. So the first one was years ago. So I was with a now ex, and I hope he's doing well. He wasn't a bad guy.
Mine involves an ex too.
Yeah. Yeah, because so we went to smoke weed. Which, little known fact about me, I'm actually allergic to weed, but I was still smoking it and playing it cool. But pollen allergy. But anywho, so we are near my folks' house, so we're kind of in the country, Tom's Brook, Virginia.
Okay, beautiful area.
Yeah, because you can see the sky pretty clearly and stuff. And at this point, you know, we're not broken up. We are very recently together. So you know, it's very, oh, your eyes are so beautiful. Oh, you know, like that honeymoon face.
Yeah.
So we go out and we have the bowl, and we're sitting there stargazing and enjoying each other's company and just, you know, oh, you're so great, you know, kind of energy. And we take a hit of this, and we're looking up at the stars and talking about you know, stars and stuff. And suddenly they start moving, and I wasn't that stoned. I don't think he was either. I don't know about him, but I was not that stoned. I took like one hit. And it was like the stars started moving. And it was like bugs, like jumping around, and how they'll stop and they'll change direction and keep going for a bit, and they'll just keep moving like that. It was literally the stars just started moving, like and it was several of them. And it was nuts. It wasn't a super flickering light. It stayed pretty consistent. It looked just like a star, and they were just moving around. And we got kind of scared because, I mean, if you're going to see all of this, you know, if you're going to see UFOs, you're going to get kind of paranoid, because I feel like people know so little, really, at the end of the day, about aliens and UFOs. It's like, well, are they going to come kidnap us? What's going to happen?
Right. What's the agenda?
Yeah. So my ex is like, let's go in. So yeah, we went in. The second time was actually very recently. Was it a year ago? I think it was a year ago when I did my cross-country road trip.
Mm-hmm.
So I drive across the country, and no weed this time. I go hiking at the Grand Canyon, and I was a little bit unprepared, which I am embarrassed to admit. I should have packed a flashlight, packed some stuff, because I didn't expect to take a very long hike, and I really didn't take a very long hike, but it was very strenuous. The Grand Canyon's no joke. And it goes dark a little bit sooner than I thought. So for a brief period, I'm there in the dark, and I'm just using my phone flashlight. And I see this thing happen again. The difference between this and that time in Tom's Brook, so it was the same kind of movement. There were a couple of them. It was less than the previous time, because it was like easily at least 9 stars in Tom's Brook. Here, it's probably like, I'm going to say 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of them was flickering. Like it was like kind of more like, it almost looked like it could be a little bit more of a human made thing, but not with the movement, not the way it was moving. The rest were, you know, just looking like the stars a little bit more. It was a lot more clear. It's a very incredible view at the Grand Canyon. I have a video of it, and I was telling some people, and I was like, what could this be? Is there an explanation other than UFO for what this could be? And one person pitched, maybe it's a drone. Maybe someone was flying a drone. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then I realized that it's a no-fly zone, because it's a national park.
Right.
So most drones, they're going to auto-program to not even fly there. So I thought, you know, we'll never really know. But I'm going to lean for that one, definitely toward UFOs. And if it wasn't that one, then it was definitely the other two that I saw.
And definitely the Grand Canyon is in that area where, you know, Area 51 is supposedly near Vegas. And there's big sections of that area that makes sense. And envy you that you got to see the Grand Canyon. I haven't gone that far. I'd love to.
Ooh.
I'd love to.
Before I forget to mention it as well. So on my trip there, because I was very intrigued by what I saw, I head to a store that had a Navajo. He was a younger guy. He was about my age. And he was working there running the shop, and we're talking a bit and talking about Arizona and, you know, all of these things. And I say it, and I'm fully prepared for him to be like, "You're weird, Kathryn, go away." But I said it anyway. I'm just like, "So, what's your stance on UFOs?" I just straight up asked him, and he said that to the Navajo, it's very hard to get this information out of the elders unless you know them really well. So even he doesn't even get a lot of information about it. But apparently, like, the Navajo elders have a lot of stuff that they'll say if you get into it deep with them enough. But they're very clammy. But to them, to the Navajo, it is facts. It's just simple facts that UFOs and aliens are a thing. And their stance is actually very similar to Stephen Hawking's, which I was reading about. He's a firm believer as well. But he warned that it's probably a good idea not to meet the aliens. Not to meet intelligent life, because same thing about if you met us, you know, I mean, humans are pretty bad.
Yes, we are.
And, so the elder stance is, leave them alone. They will show themselves when they want to show themselves. And I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah. We've discussed, you know, in the other podcasts, like there's got to be an agenda. And like you said, if they're anything like us, that's the terrifying prospect. Right?
Yeah.
Because what we do when we go cross oceans, seas, you know, colonize, you know, exploit. So those are your fears, you know. Could be much deeper as to why they're here, you know. I'll share, I very much hope, because of the current disclosure movement, and I mentioned people like the guy from Blink 182, I can't remember his name. He has To the Stars Academy. He puts a lot of money into the disclosure movement. There's an entrepreneur named Robert Bigelow that claims to be in possession of, he calls it metamaterial, alien metamaterial. He's a big push for the disclosure because he wants to be able to market this stuff. He also is the owner of what's called Skinwalker Ranch, which is supposedly some paranormal hotspot. Again, of course, Jeremy Corbell, this guy Luis Alejandro that used to work for the Pentagon, and he's the first one that breaks the story with the New York Times in 2017. Let's cue can I hear the X-Files music one more time, and then I'm gonna tell my story. All right, this is my shout out to Emily Rook. So you can go ahead and bring that down. My friend Emily Rook, she went backpacking with me and my friend Sean Craig in Central America when I turned 30. Woman has an amazing courage and is just, you know, a great adventurer. She was a lot of fun. We dated. One of the few ex-girlfriends that still talks to me 30 years later, so I'll give her that, you know. And she's been going through a lot with her mom. But here's my UFO story. This was when I was dating Emily, early in the honeymoon phase, like you mentioned. So early days of cell phone. I remember it was a winter month, like January, end of January or something. And the moon was just huge, like a huge, beautiful moon. And I was smoked at the time, so I was working at Frederick Memorial Hospital, and I worked up in the psych unit, and I was on a smoke break. I called her on this primitive cell phone, and I was giving her some line of bullshit about beautiful moon. She was as beautiful as some shit like that. You know, yeah, exactly. You know, that guy bullshit. It sounded great at the time. But then, so I'm staring at this moon, and I see, I'll make a circle. I see what looks like the beginning of an eclipse, right? And I keep staring at it, and I'm like, I thought it was my contacts. But then I watched this whole thing, and it takes a significant period of time, and it looks like an eclipse. And it was, so the next day I get online, I'm checking to try to find if there's anything astrological. I lived in, my grandmother lived with me at the time. I had a house in Shenandoah Junction, and I'd scribbled down a note like on the time and all the stuff that I'd seen it. And she came over, she looks at the note, and she goes, I saw that. She goes, I thought it was the beginning of an eclipse. And whatever I saw in my mind at that time, and even now, I thought I saw something near the moon, like so large near the moon that it cut out some of the light as it went, you know, it was that large. Now, it could have just been something anywhere in my sight between there and the moon, right? But whatever it was large, you know, and so that was the only, you know, unidentified aerial phenomena that, you know, I can recount. I saw something I couldn't explain. I couldn't find any answer for it. But in the psychedelic state, you know, I've often gone looking for aliens and spaceships, but I've yet to find any. But no, this has been a blast. So I'm going to ask one last question, and anything that you want to wrap with, I'm more than comfortable. What was your take on the Zero film? What did you think of it at the end?
The Zero film? I had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
I think it brought a lot of people together, gave a lot of people their shot into film, which I think was a very beautiful thing. I think it's a fun, little just funny, no budget little movie. And I love Wesley. Wesley is great. I like his music too.
I've never heard him play.
It's really good.
Good.
Check into his songs. You'll be very impressed. But yeah, the Zero film, it was a lot of fun.
It was interesting.
Yeah.
Give me your take on Burns. Tell me, like, Matt, your relationship with Matt.
So Matt Burns is really cool. He's a goofball.
Yeah.
But he's my goofball. He's everybody's goofball.
I think he's got the greatest laugh. I love to hear Matt Burns laugh.
Yeah.
And I think he's got a great personality. I'm happy to see all the things that he does. He's definitely got an interesting taste in cinema, you know.
And he'll just like come up with people sometimes where I'm just like, where did you get this person? So he messages me one day and he's like, hey, Kathryn, can you drive a convention guest for me to the airport? And I'm like, sure, okay. He's like, it's the guy who owned the Leaky Cauldron in Harry Potter. And I'm like, Matt, where did you get him? And apparently he just straight up got he got Jim Tavere. He got him over to like Waynesboro for like a little small Harry Potter event. And I'm just like, cool.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to announce we're taking a little bit of a break. I got a work project coming up. I'm going to be going to Florida next weekend. We're hoping to pick up an episode after that on, we're going to call it MK Ultra and the Conspiracy of Psychiatry. But we've got a couple of shows in development that we're hoping to record on Sunday. Is that October the 5th? Is it the 5th or the 6th? The 6th, October the 6th. We're trying to put together one on it's called American Conspiracy, the Octopus Murders on Netflix. Are you familiar with that?
I have heard of that. I've seen it when I was scrolling, and I haven't hit it yet.
Check it out. The story begins in Martinsburg in 1991 with the murder of a journalist named Danny Casolaro at the old Sheridan, just down the street from here. The documentary, it's season 1. They're going into season 2. So I'm hopeful that we have feelers out to 2 friends, but one of them is actually in the documentary. So we're hoping to get him on, and then we're trying to hopefully make arrangements to have someone from the series on Netflix be on the show for the first time, like with the Zoom. And then we have a very special program. We're setting it up when we're done with you with this is for anyone like into the UFO stuff. You got to do your own research. V Valiant Thor. I'm sorry, let me screw. V Valiant Thor is going to be on our show. V Valiant Thor. All right. Thanks everyone for watching. Once again, Ramirez Unraveled comes to a close.